House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries speaking on the House floor for several hours at this point. House Republicans ready to vote on President Trump's $4.5 trillion tax breaks and spending cuts bill today. They were up all night as GOP leaders and the president himself worked to persuade holdouts to drop their opposition by this 4th of July deadline. That's tomorrow. Final debates began in the pre-dawn hours after another chaotic day and night at the Capitol. House Speaker Mike Johnson insisted the House would meet the holiday deadline after the Senate approved Trump's signature domestic policy package on the narrowest vote. Now, we did ask you here before the break to weigh in. We do have a live panel coming up in just a moment. We asked you, what questions do you have about the big, beautiful bill? And a lot of you did write in there. We're going to answer those questions in just a moment, but if you would like to still ask a question, you can scan that QR code in the top right-hand corner of your screen. We will answer it now. I did also want to just share before we go to this panel, we did get a live stakeout cam outside the White House. Hopefully we get some comments there as we are keeping an eye on that as well. All right, let's answer some of these questions. I do want to bring in Sandra Swirsky. She's the founder and CEO of Integer LLC, and Rich Rubino, political analyst. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And Rich, let's start with you. We've been listening in here for hours on the House floor at this point. We've been watching over the days here of this debate going back and forth. Do you think that this can really get to President Trump's desk by tomorrow, that July 4th deadline?
Right now, I would think yes. I think certainly Congressman Jeffries is going as slow as he possibly can to try to delay it. But basically, I think the answer is yes. I think that we saw on the procedural vote anyway that every solitary Republican, from the members of the Freedom Caucus, including the former holdouts like Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina, and Andy Harris of Maryland, voted for it. And on the other side, the more moderate members like Mike Lawler of New York and Don Bacon of Nebraska voted for it. The only holdout has been Brian Fitzpatrick from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But other than that, it looks like it's probably going to get to the president's desk on his self-imposed deadline, which was July 4th.
All right, Sandra, next question is for you here. I did want to just share some of the comments we've been hearing from both sides of the aisle. Of course, we've been listening into House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries all morning here, but he put this out on social media just a few days ago. He said, the one big ugly bill hurts everyday Americans in order to reward billionaires. It's an absolute disgusting piece of legislation. We're going to do everything we can to stop it. Let's see if we can switch now to House Speaker Mike Johnson, as he also was sharing the opposing side of this here. He said, the one big beautiful bill delivers historic relief to American families. Voting against it means American families and small businesses will be hit with the largest tax hike in U.S. history. So this can be confusing, Sandra, for people who are watching this, hearing from both sides of the aisle, Democrats saying this is going to hurt people, Republicans saying this is going to be good for people as it comes to taxes. Can we really break down what this bill is saying here?
Sure. And I think there's a little bit of truth in both of those. And I also think it really depends on where you stand. There is a lot of new provisions in there for everyday working families, whether it is not taxing tips for bartenders and wait staff and salon workers, to not taxing overtime for folks on the shop floor and others. Those are all new and somewhat unexpected, and would have been unexpected about a year ago. I think what everyone can agree on, both Democrats and Republicans, is that these tax cuts that were put into place in 2017 are going to expire at the end of this year. And there are very few in Congress that want to let that happen. And if the president signs this bill, as we expect he will very shortly, that will prevent higher taxes coming into place in January. There's a whole lot of other provisions in there. Some on the spending side, some taking a swipe at Medicaid and some of the food assistance programs, and some offering more generous tax benefits. It's a very big bill, and I'm not even sure every member of Congress knows every detail in there. So it remains to be seen as we wade through all of it, just how generous and just how onerous this bill will be.
Yeah, let's stay on Medicaid. I did want to share this video from Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries just the other day. Let's listen.
And we're going to expose the truth to the American people, because the American people deserve the truth. This is the largest assault on health care in American history. It's an assault on Medicaid, on Medicare, and on the Affordable Care Act, which will result in millions of people who currently get health care coverage from the Affordable Care Act losing access to their health care. It's the largest assault on nutritional assistance in American history. It's the largest transfer of wealth from everyday Americans to billionaires in American history. Shame on Republicans for trying.
All right. So again, Medicaid, let's talk about it. I feel like this has been a really big talking point with the Democrats here. What have Republicans been saying when it comes to Medicaid? Who's really going to be affected here? I know Sandra just touched on it briefly, but can we dive a little bit deeper? Rich, Sandra, whoever wants to take that.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting question. Republicans say what's going to happen is that they're going to make more stringent in terms of having work requirements. Democrats basically are saying that it's going to cut Medicare and it's going to take Medicare away potentially from 11 million Americans. Medicare is something that in the past, you can go back, for example, Bill Clinton in 1996 got reelected in part by arguing that Bob Dole, the Republican nominee, and Newt Gingrich, the Speaker of the House, were going to work together and they were going to try to cut Medicare. This is really something that's really a mobilizing or a galvanizing issue, if you will, for the Democrats. And I think that the Republicans may have given them a gift, whatever the intricacies of the policy. The fact of the matter is that Democrats in every congressional district, especially running against vulnerable Republicans next time around, will be able to say that this congressman wants to truncate Medicare. They want to cut Medicare. You're going to see, for example, this happening to a lot of moderate Republicans who are either running for re-election, including the two members now that are still up for re-election that represent congressional districts that last time that are Republicans who went for Vice President Harris. Again, Congressman Fitzpatrick is the only one that's kind of inoculated himself from this potential criticism by likely voting against the legislation and voting against the procedural measure. But this is something that Republicans, obviously at their own peril, this is going to be something Democrats are really going to use against Republicans in pretty much anywhere from northern Maine to Southern California.
If I could just jump in for a minute.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Sandra, sure.
Yeah, and just make a clarifying point. They're talking about Medicaid, not Medicare. Which is a really important point because Medicare is for folks over 65. Medicaid is for low-income folks. And I think, as Rich noted, the Republicans view it as rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. And the Democrats call it gutting the system. And it's probably somewhere in between.
Right. And we do have some viewer questions here that I'm sure touch on a lot of you guys have already touched on here, but I did just want to share some of them. Let's start with this one. Does no tax on overtime mean a credit at the end of the year for the overtime worked, or no taxes off our paychecks from overtime?
Great question. I'll field that one. So while Congress puts into place the overarching policy, and these provisions are in the bill and they are very popular, as you can imagine, then after the bill is passed, it gets moved over to the Treasury Department, and the Treasury Department will answer some of these details, will help to implement when, how, and work with the IRS to figure that out. So right now, we know that if the president signs the bill, we will get some tax relief in that area. Exactly how it's done is going to be left to the Treasury Department, and they will, I'm sure, put their nose to the grindstone and get those details out just as soon as they can, because, again, these are very popular provisions.
All right. Our next question here is related to electric vehicles. Are EVs going to get a yearly tax? Will EV purchase credit go away?
The EV credits are being rolled back, and benefits and credits and the like are being phased out more quickly. Again, how that will actually, as we say, how the rubber is going to meet the road on those particular provisions will be left to the Treasury Department to implement. And again, that's something they're going to work on really quickly because it is something that's going to affect a lot of consumers.
One of our next questions here is about Social Security. So I did want to share this one from Stephanie. How will the big, beautiful bill affect it?
Okay. I don't really think that it's really necessarily going to have any direct effect on Social Security. That is something that comes actually from a different, that's actually a different budget in many respects. So I don't think you're going to really see that. I think that's why you haven't seen Democrats saying that seniors are going to lose their Social Security. What they are saying is that disabled Americans and poor Americans will lose their Medicaid, but there really hasn't been anything on Social Security. So this isn't really an issue that Democrats can go after Republicans for in the 2026 midterm elections.
Yeah. I will note, though, that it was really important to Congress to put into place some tax relief for those seniors who do take Social Security and who are also working. The president on the campaign trail said he wanted to eliminate taxes on all that income. So what Congress did is they put into place a much larger deduction for folks over 65, up to $12,000 for a married couple, in addition to the other deductions that seniors get. And that $12,000 is a proxy for what the president had promised on the campaign trail, that he was going to take taxes off of Social Security earnings.
As we're wrapping up the questions here, one of them does go back to Medicaid, and I did want to go off of what Theron P is asking here. Who will actually be affected by Medicaid and healthcare cuts from the big beautiful bill? A lot of you guys have touched on a lot of that here. I guess going off of that, has President Trump spoken on this recently? And I think another key point here is people are wondering about healthcare for immigrants. Has the president said anything on that? Have Republicans spoken on that?
I don't think he's. I'm not too sure about healthcare specifically for immigrants. All the way, obviously, he says that there will be no. Obviously, he's against the idea of giving healthcare to undocumented or illegal, depending on your perspective. But I do think that Donald Trump is basically saying that he's saying don't mess with Medicaid. He's saying that there will be no that there will really be no cuts to the program. And obviously, a lot of, since as the Republicans at least are starting to do very well with working class voters, and Democrats more with professional voters, more with kind of it's interesting on the Republican side. For example, Mike Johnson represents a congressional district that that 40% of his constituents are on Medicaid or Medicare, or on Medicaid rather. So it's very interesting how Donald Trump is basically positioning himself. Don't get rid of don't try to cut Medicaid. This is the new Republican mantra. Everyone from Tucker Carlson to Marjorie Taylor Greene knows that the Republican, where their bread is buttered in many respects, there are a lot of blue collar Republicans who are very much dependent upon these programs.
Our last question here, and Rich, I'm going to give this one to you as well. If the bill is passed, how soon is this going to go into effect? And I think going off of that too, when can Americans start to feel the impacts?
Great question. I think generally speaking, this piece of legislation is no different. It goes into effect the next year, usually beginning on January 1st, unless there are some sort of emergency measures in the piece of legislation that would go in effect right away. But usually it goes into effect January 1st of the next year.
All right, Sandra, go ahead, Sandra. Yep.
Yeah. I will note, though, that the no tax on tips and the no tax on overtime is effective for this year. So there is going to be immediate relief this year. When we're going to see that, it will be up to the Treasury Department to see how they can implement it, how quickly they can implement it, but it will be for this year.
Well, thank you both so much for breaking this down for our viewers. A lot of good questions. Thank you to our viewers for writing them in. We do like to answer them here live on LiveNOW from Fox. All right, we're going to go away for a break. Thank you to our two experts. We'll be right back.
Thank you.